You're listening to Pathways and Means, a podcast that inspires and shows people how to tap into their creative spirit. We sit down with leaders and makers in every industry to talk about their process, what inspires them, and about how to build incredible things with the power of creativity. The future belongs to the creators, so come join us. This is Pathways and Means. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of Pathways and Means. My name's Connor England.
It's your boy SJ in the building, baby.
And we're happy to be here. Today's going to be a little bit more of a somber conversation than we usually have, but it's one that has been persistent in the culture for some time now. It doesn't show any signs of stopping. And because of that, we feel now is the appropriate time for us to address it. And that is the question of the Great Resignation. So this is a phenomenon that we're seeing across society, especially in the United States, where people, for whatever reason, and there are a number of reasons, be it COVID, be it the economic shocks that are happening as a result, us experiencing all sorts of different things, such as the advent of remote work really taking on. There's all sorts of reasons, right? But we're seeing that people are leaving the workforce, are leaving participation in it in droves. Like we've never really seen them before outside of like the Great Depression. So today we want to spend a little bit of time really exploring some of the foundational concepts that are lying at the bottom of why this is happening. A lot of it actually falls deeply in line with some of the research and some of the explorations that we do here at Creative Pathways and Means. And so we want to open up a dialogue, see if we can't explore some of these concepts together, both as the people that maybe are opting out of the workforce, as well as those that are trying to understand what's gone wrong and how to maybe we change our approach so that we can bring people back into a place where we can work together in a way that makes sense for everybody. So, SJ, just given the pulse that we're seeing around town on the internet, what's sort of just the general consensus of how people are feeling? What's your take as to why maybe some people are choosing to leave the system?
Man, I think that people have just had it up to here. You know, and I mean, I say up to here, I'm like up to here. 2020 was a doozy. You know, we just went through, I mean, we're still going through it. You know, there's mask mandates, COVID came about, the way that we operate and do business day to day, and everything has changed. I mean, I never was on a Zoom call before 2020. You know, I know Skype and all that other stuff was out there, but I had never used it. I never had a need to use it. People are also scared because they're not really sure what's to come. And, you know, for years, you know, pensions have been getting taken away. Benefits have been, you know, getting took away. There's so many things that were happening in the workplace to where big business was taking things away from the employees and things. And it got to the point where people didn't see a positive belief in a potential future in the workplaces. So when unemployment and things started paying more than what their jobs were paying, like, you know, I'm opting out. I'm not coming back to work. I'm leaving. I quit.
Man, it's crazy because I love the way that you frame that. It's like there was a better option than staying into the system. And so a bunch of people have decided to go with that better option. It's kind of a scary place when contributing to society around a lot of the different things that we need in order to keep the entire game going no longer looks like the attractive option, right? So like if you look at Bureau of Labor Statistics data, for the longest time, people quitting is usually seen as a sign of optimism, right? Like both you and I have worked inside of factories. We've worked in some pretty grueling jobs in some places that, you know, whether it was to provide for the families, whether it was to advance ourselves in the long term. Like we've been in some places that maybe weren't our first choice. And when we left those, it was usually a sign of optimism. It's like, all right, we're ready for the next step. We're ready for the next chapter. That doesn't necessarily seem to be why people are leaving, and it's not a few people, right? Like the data in November and December were putting us north of 4 million people in the United States alone quitting, which is, I mean, like 1 in every 100 people is just, they're out. So while the opportunity for like unemployment income and some of these other pieces may be attractive for the short term, it doesn't necessarily feel like this go around that it's the case that people are excited for whatever is to come, right? So that's something that we have to contend with, because right now, like Subways are having a hard time finding people to work for $20 an hour to make sandwiches. And like, had someone have pitched us that idea, pitched the world that idea like 10 years ago, I think that a lot of people would have been like, yeah, I'm in. How much mayo you want? Like, come on now. The whole jar?
The whole jar.
Just smacking it.
Throw some jalapenos on that joint too.
Yeah. But so like it feels oddly more personal than that now, because if it were just a money thing, them going ahead and them throwing a little bonus on top would have enticed a lot more people to have opted into the system. But I think we're seeing a lot of people who are like, oh, so you had the money all along.
Yeah.
Right. I think I'm going to hold out, which seems to represent that maybe there's a little bit more of a cultural challenge that's going on underneath. So, you know, from your experience and from the people that you've worked with, I know that we deal with a lot of people that are playing at pretty high levels of culture, but that's also above average by design. What's sort of your pulse on how most organizations, potentially out of necessity, are treating their people, and where's some of that stuff starting to break down?
You know, there are some examples out there. You've got big companies, you know, I don't want to really specifically name names of these companies, but factories, to where they're going to do the bare minimum of what they need to do for their employees, to be, you know, for it to be contractual and everything good. You have other companies that go a little bit up and beyond, and they create a culture for the employees to where they want them to come to work happy. They want to dig in, because the people who know the most about the company are the people on the floor working it and doing the different things. And sometimes they'll say, okay, yeah, you can submit this slip and let us know how we can do things better, because you guys are the most important and everything like that. They don't always take that into consideration, or if they do implement that idea, they don't give credit to where it came from. And then the people on top take credit for somebody else's idea that they have been doing things for. Until the people actually get to the point to where they're at now, where they're leaving, they're not going to listen to the people. But, you know, we are the people, and we make up America and the whole world. So I think right now people are starting to see how powerful that they are, because you've got businesses that are shutting down right now, and they have signs on their doors saying we cannot keep our doors open because we can't keep employees. So the power is right back into the people's hands. But now the people have to figure out what's coming and what are they going to do to prepare for different things, because the environment's changing. And when changes come, you have to figure out what skills are going to be needed in order to thrive in the coming future. But right now, everybody is saying that the power is in the people right now. And it's not in the big corporations, because the big corporations, some of them are shutting down because the people are leaving. Great resignation.
Yep. I think that the money piece is interesting, because if it were as simple as we need to print more money, we need to raise wages, we need for, like, that's not necessarily what's at the heart of it. And like, people are trying that. They're like, here, just take more, just come back. We'll take less profit. But I don't think for a second that that's at the heart of it. Because if you follow the behavior, you start to see that there were a lot of organizations that had really solid cultures where people are making less than what Subway is offering to make sandwiches.
Right. Yeah.
And they bound together, and they pushed through a lot of the challenges that were there. Like, And this is something that happened both during COVID, but it's happened at other times. But like Southwest, right, recognized as having one of the best cultures in the airlines. When entire airlines were going under, they were all able to reduce the overall amount that they were making, from the flight attendants to the pilots to the bag checkers to everybody, the maintenance people, because they understood that their culture pieces were important enough that if they could all get through it, that there was going to be goodness on the other side, rather than laying a bunch of people off like United or other groups did. Like, virtually no one lost their jobs that would have otherwise lost them. I mean, we're talking $1 billion losses in a lot of these places, but the way that Southwest treats their people culturally was interesting and meaningful enough for a lot of people to take a serious haircut, serious pay cut, in order to continue to work there. So a lot of that comes down to the culture, the set of behaviors that everybody agrees to move like. And so in the middle of COVID, it's like, as the pressure of the world started to bubble up, it is kind of like a water test, right? You want to figure out where your leaks are in a tire. You go ahead and you submerge it underwater,
right? And
you see where the holes are, and then you can go in and you can plug those. Well, it's because of that added pressure. I think COVID added so much pressure to everybody that a lot of the leaks got exposed. But instead of us being able to patch them, like, they just blew wide open.
I like how you put that. Yeah.
And now we're to a place where they're thinking, oh, just replace the tire as usual. It's like, no, we need to completely redesign. Maybe not even completely, but we need to understand where the leaks are across the system, because it wasn't everybody. You know, the Southwests, the Advisors Excels, even the Creative Pathways and Means and Top Tiers, like, we didn't see a bunch of flight in the middle of it. Quite honestly, like, we saw the opposite. And it wasn't about the money. It was about what people value in the ways that they're moving. And I think that a lot of people are going to be heading in those directions. So what are some of the things that for a lot of these groups are more important than money, and that whether they explicitly say it or not, a lot of the marketplace is demanding, essentially, in numbers, that we provide so that work feels meaningful enough to show back up?
You know, people don't want to be treated like robots. You know, I mean, you don't want to just have to, you know, people going to work unmotivated, uninspired, mad. I mean, truthfully, some people be going to work mad, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to sit in this cubicle for 8 hours. I'm going to have to listen to Linda come over here and say this, and then I'm going to have to play nice. I'm going to have to put this smile on my face when I don't feel like doing it. So they have to go to work and be fake. People want to be able to work in their strengths. They want to be able to work and do different things that really don't feel like so much work. It's the same reason why, you know, when you say the word business, some people just think suits or stuffy or whatever. They don't think it's exciting. It could be a creative enterprise. I can put whatever I want to put into my business as long as it lines up with my values and my purpose and things. People are feeling like they are going against their purpose and their values, so they go to work and go work for some place and are doing things that they don't even believe in, maybe not even support, you know, but it's paying the bills, and that's how they justify going to work. So I think that people in the, you know, some of the bosses, the corporations, they need to start leaning on their people and putting them in positions to where they can thrive and live in their strengths. And during that, I just believe that's the way that they're going to be able to get to the people. But they can't just continue to be business as usual. It has to change, because times are changing, environments are changing. So it's time for us to change.
Right. And it's possibly overdue. I mean, we look at like the Industrial Revolution, and we had children working 12 hours, you know, and I mean, a 70 to 80 hour week is enough to make someone want to vomit nowadays, but like, that was the norm, and for kids.
Yeah, that child labor laws came up out of that, yeah.
And to say that we're worse off for not having that extra productivity is like cartoonishly wrong. But in much the same way, it's like we go through this evolution where we figure out that the way that we work has to change in order for us to change. And that's a hard thing for like the people that are running the factories, the business owners that are out there that are doing the best that they can to keep their doors open in the middle of COVID, right? There are behaviors that if we just calibrate and we figure out, okay, what's this next evolution that we can implement, and not only are we going to keep our doors open, but we're going to be able to do more with less. And it's hard for organizations that maybe aren't moving in those ways, right, to know what those things are. It's hard for you to observe a structure from inside of it. So if you're showing up every day and you're just operating, you're not necessarily looking for, you might not be aware of those minor changes that you can make in the way that you move that are going to radically improve not only your culture and how people feel about you, but ironically, your productivity as well. So here at CPM, and I think a fair amount of our success and growth has came to the fact that it's not, we're not a money-centric organization. Like, you know, we're profitable and we're growing, but I don't think for a second that you or I hold as like central values that it's just squeeze as much juice out of the economy as possible. You know, there are some of these other elements that matter too. So, you know, here at CPM, we talk about the ABCs, right? And maybe we could share a little bit about what that is, and why that's so important for people.
Yeah, the ABCs are, I mean, it's a phenomenal concept because a lot of times, you know, we've been given this lie, fed it forever. Business is everything. Just get into your business, get your money, and you're going to be okay. But business is only 1/3 of different stuff, because you could have your business all lined up, it could look good and everything, but then if you have no connection to community, who are you going to sell your stuff to? Or if you have no artistic, you know, skills, or don't have anybody in that area, then even with your business and your graphic design and everything is going to just fall flat.
Right. So for those who are the uninitiated, humans operate in 3 creative environments. You got A, arts, which is self-directed value creation. That's any time that you've got the ability to say, this is what I'm doing, this is why, these are my values, instead of you being just told what to do or you following orders. People have a need for that. Maybe not everywhere, but they do have a need for that. You got business, which is all about the increasing of value. So whatever we chose in the arts, it's like, all right, we got the seed here. How do we water it so that it can continue to grow and be more fruitful over time? That's business. And we got community, which is connecting around whatever value it is that you've made here, A, B, C. Now everybody has these 3 fundamental needs that are out there. And I think, you know, we're seeing that a lot of those needs just aren't being met. You know, and we've been doing a fair amount of research, and we've got a great conversation that's coming up here before too long. We'll tease a little bit of that out at the end of the podcast, but you know, there are these cultural elements that if you're not thinking about them intentionally, culture happens by default unless it happens by design.
Absolutely.
You know, are you choosing the behaviors that you want for all of your people to be doing? Have you made them explicit? Do you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 behaviors that every single person that shows up when they're going through training, it's not just, all right, here's the CRM, or here's how you operate this machine, but like, here's what we value, here's what we believe, and here's how we live that out on a day-to-day basis. And like, we'll figure all this stuff out.
Right.
But this right here is what keeps us moving together. You know, there's someone that's running a coffee shop might not feel that that's important. Someone who builds airplanes, they might not think that that's important. But it's important to the people that are building the airplanes and are brewing the coffee.
Right.
And I think what we're finding is that, oh yeah, they're the backbone. They're what's keeping all of this afloat. And the only other alternative is automation and robots. And we're heading into some pretty interesting territory on that one, right? This is sort of a crucible moment because COVID put a lot of pressure on us, but there is sort of this thing that's lurking in the background called automation and AI, and it's coming with a vengeance. So what's sort of the prospects of that look like, SJ?
Have you heard of the Tesla? There are driving vehicles out here that require nobody to drive it. And that's going to be a big thing. There's actually vehicles that are already doing this. The trucking industry, that's going to be something that's going to happen. So there's things that you can actually see in real time. Even if you go into any grocery store, McDonald's, you don't always have to check out with a person. And so these things are happening. I mean, you've got copyright as far as you've got Jarvis, you've got different things out here to where, AI can type up your content. There are things that are happening right now. So we're seeing it in real time. AI and automation, I mean, they've already have been integrated, and it's just going to continue to go. The good thing is, when robots phase out, I don't want to say phase out, but when they might blow a circuit or something like that, it's humans that have to come beside and fix those robots. So there's always going to be things for the creatives out here, but people have to know that they're creative and have to believe it and have to have some frameworks and toolkits in order to bring that out of them. And that's what CPM is all about.
Right. I don't think that people necessarily understand the magnitude of what's coming. We generally like to keep a really positive and upbeat spirit here. But sometimes, like, the most positive thing you can do is be real honest and authentic with what's coming so that you can prepare for it, right? Like, if a hurricane is showing up on the Doppler and you're like, oh, but it's fine, we're going to be able to rebuild. No, it's like you need to communicate that we need to evacuate and then we can rebuild, right? And there's a hurricane that's coming. MIT and McKinsey are pointing at somewhere around 40 to 45 million jobs essentially eradicated over the next 10 years due to AI and automation, which really begs the question, okay, what's going to be the space that's left for people to be able to operate? Because we got a lot of business owners that are over here that are seeing everybody great resigning, and they're thinking to themselves, I will not be exposed to this level of risk again. That opens up a space for a lot of people in robotics and AI to be building solutions that aren't dependent on people. And I think we've felt that in Kansas real heavy, like in the farming industry, and we have deeper conversations around there, but it's like, thousands and thousands of people displaced because farmers may not have, like, the farm hands might not have always been as reliable. So it's like, can we build a combine that can drive itself on GPS? It's a conscious cultural choice to be building solutions that work with people instead of against them or to replace them. And given the Great Resignation being where it is and given where our technological capacity is increasing to, things could look very different here in the next 10 years, which means that there's got to be a conversation both for employers and for people out there that are trying to be gainfully employed, whether it's inside of a company or through their arts or by building a community that sustains them and others. What does that look like in a world where we're technologically at a place that people don't have to be employed, but people need meaningful work in order to be fulfilled? What does that intermediate space look like? And I think that maybe now's a good moment to talk about this training that we got coming up. So SJ, what's happening on February 8th?
February 8th, going to have a webinar that's going to be parked on our website, and this will allow people to be able to view this at their convenience. But it is jumping off at 11 o'clock, February 8th, and it's going to be called New Frontiers.
Central Standard Time.
Central Standard Time, because we are here in the great state of Kansas. So we really want to be able to address some of these different issues and what's going on, what people are feeling, and really get detailed even about, just the timelines in the whole world and how this exponential growth has just happened all within the last, a couple of 100 years. I mean, it's just a hockey stick, and things are not slowing down. And we're all about being proactive. So we want to be able to put some of these things in your hands. We want you to start thinking about some different things in different ways, different perspective. And we also want to be able to just see what some of you guys' thoughts are, in the comment sections and things like that. But if we don't talk about it, we're not going to be able to really put our best foot forward and solve some of these things, or at least get to thinking about it. There's some things that have to be pondered upon. You cannot keep your head in the sand like an ostrich and just think that everything's going to be okay, because it won't be if we don't take some of these steps to make things okay.
100%. Yeah. Well, it's been a fun, casual conversation, even if it was maybe a little bit heavier than we usually go.
It's going down. Get your stuff together, man. What's happening?
I know that I'm excited for this conversation around the new frontiers, because it's going to lay bare and clear a lot of the challenges that we're facing, both on the side of the people who are opting out, get right to the heart of some of those reasons, how people are unfulfilled, some of those cultural elements that maybe are to a place where we've got to make those changes if we're going to move through. It goes into a lot of solid research in a very accessible way around the gravity of the challenges that we're facing. But more than that, it shows some really positive and immediately applicable ways that whether you're an employer who's trying to figure this out, or you are a human being with creative needs that are on the other side, that maybe you just know that things don't feel right, and you're trying to get a pulse on why they don't feel right, so that maybe you can know that the next time that you step up to the plate, you're going to be ready and you're going to be empowered, and you're going to get to a place where life is never going to feel like it did when things hurt this much again, right? For us to collectively try and figure out what the new frontier is. So we're going to be having that conversation February 8th, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. A link will be provided in the description. We really hope that you'll join us in this conversation, because I know that wherever it is that you're at, you might feel resigned to the situation that you're facing. You might be someone who is trying to put food on families' tables and are seeing people decide that they don't want to roll with you anymore, and you got to figure it out. And you might have this tendency to just use AI, or to use robots, or to just close your doors, because that's always an option too. But that's a resignation as well. And here's the thing. We've gotten through some really pretty hard stuff before. We'll get through this too, but it's going to be on the strength of us trying to understand what it is, what needs aren't being met, and how we can recalibrate those culturally together so that we can move forward. There's some great conversation that's research backed and has been proven to work exceptionally well throughout COVID. And we'll give you some future forecasting to know what it is that you can do in order to be prepared. So we hope that you'll join us. We're glad that you joined us today. We hope that wherever it is that you are in the world, that you're making it through, and not just surviving, but that you're taking the steps that you need in order to thrive as a fully integrated creative human being. This has been another episode of Pathways and Means. SJ?
Bet the farm on it.
Thanks, everybody. That's it.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found today's episode informative and inspiring. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to Pathways and Means wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to learn more about CPM and how to grow creatively into the future, visit creativepathwaysandmeans.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, where we post daily content and connect and engage with creators like you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.